60 seconds. That's how long I'd been in my new lakefront house before the woman across the street came charging over, screaming, "Get away from my lake. You don't belong here." I stood frozen on the porch, still holding the last cardboard box labeled kitchen stuff, completely bewildered. "Lady, I just bought this place. What do you mean your lake?" But she wasn't joking. This woman, Veronica Sterling, was dead serious. And she had no idea she'd just lit the fuse on the biggest property war this quiet lakeside community had ever seen. I'd literally just carried that final box from my truck to the porch. Hadn't even unlocked the front door yet. And there she was, sprinting across the street like she'd been waiting for me, watching from her window the second my tires hit the driveway. She couldn't have been more than 5'4", but she carried herself like she ruled the entire neighborhood. "You can't be here," she shouted, pointing at me like I was trespassing. "This is my lake." I blinked, trying to process it. "Your lake?" I stammered. "I inherited this house from my great-uncle Harry. I spent my life savings to move here after my divorce. You're telling me I can't stand on my own property?" She didn't flinch. "I'm the lake manager," she said, as if that explained everything. "All newcomers need my permission." Lake manager? I'd never heard of such a thing. But she waved a clipboard in my face like it was some official document, and for a second, I wondered, had I missed something in all the paperwork? "People like you destroy property values," she went on. That's when I knew this wasn't about rules or regulations. People like you. What did that mean? I didn't have to guess for long. She looked me up and down, my beat-up work truck, my construction boots, the paint-stained jeans, and made her judgment. "This neighborhood is for people who respect the standards," she said coldly. "Not for working-class folks like you." There it was. She'd already decided I didn't belong. And the lake behind my house? She pointed at it like it was her personal kingdom. "Mine," she said. "Stay away." I wanted to fire back, tell her exactly what she could do with her attitude, but I couldn't. Not really. I was in the middle of a custody battle with my ex-wife, and my lawyer had been crystal clear. Any documented incident, any complaint, any police report could cost me time with my 8-year-old daughter, Lily. One angry outburst, one neighbor's call, and Jane's lawyer would have all the ammunition they needed to keep Lily from me. So I stood there, jaw clenched, forcing myself to stay calm while this woman claimed ownership of the water behind my house. She started snapping photos of my truck with her phone, muttering about parking violations. Parking violations? It was in my own driveway. But she acted like she was gathering evidence for court. "Violation of parking ordinances," she announced, like she had the authority of law behind her. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. "We have a situation," she said. "Yes, the new one." The way she said the new one sent a chill down my spine, like I was some kind of problem to be dealt with, not a neighbor. I realized then she had connections, people she could call. And the whole thing felt rehearsed, like she'd done this before, like she'd driven out others who didn't meet her standards. I tried to reason with her. "Ma'am, I legally own this house. It was left to me by my great-uncle." But Veronica wasn't interested in facts. "I don't care who died," she snapped. "Lake access requires approval." Then she flipped open that clipboard and showed me a list of community rules. Only they weren't community rules. They were her rules. "These are my rules for my lake," she said, as if that made them binding. The audacity was staggering. Here I was on my own land, being told I needed permission to go near the water that came with the property. She bragged about how she'd removed 4 families from this lake, and I'd be number 5. Removed. What kind of power did she think she had? 48 hours, she said. That's how long you have to understand how things work here. Then she turned and walked straight to the dock behind my house, the dock that was part of my property, and stepped onto it like she owned it. She pulled out a tape measure, started taking measurements, snapping more photos. An official inspection? On my dock. I stood on the porch, watching this woman treat my property like her personal fiefdom, and all I could think was, this is insane, but I couldn't yell. Couldn't tell her to get off. Couldn't call the cops without risking my custody case. So I just watched. As she finally turned to leave, she paused, looked back, and said, I've removed 4 families from this lake. You'll be number 5. Then she walked back across the street, stopping one last time to take more photos of my dock, like she was marking her territory. What had I gotten myself into? This house was supposed to be my fresh start. A safe, stable place where Lily could come on weekends. Where we could fish, swim, build memories. Instead, I was being threatened by a self-appointed lake dictator who didn't even own the water she was guarding. But as Veronica disappeared into her house, I noticed something strange. A few minutes later, she was back, on my dock again, measuring something with that same tape measure. What was she planning? I had no idea that this petty harassment would lead to a discovery that would change everything. But first, I had to survive what she was about to throw at me. The harassment didn't slow down. It escalated. Day 1, a $200 fine for parking my truck at the wrong angle. It was parked perfectly straight in my own driveway. Day 2, $150 for my mailbox not meeting community standards. It was the same mailbox that came with the house. Day 3, a violation notice for noise because I was hammering at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. Not 2 a.m., 2 in the afternoon. Day 4, $300 for unauthorized lake viewing. I was looking at the water from my kitchen window. I swear I couldn't make this stuff up. Each notice was hand-delivered by Veronica, who wore a smug little smile like she was enjoying every second. By day 5, I'd had enough. I called the number on one of the notices. "This is ridiculous," I shouted into the phone, immediately regretting it. "Language," came her voice, sickeningly sweet. "I'm documenting your aggressive behavior." She was recording the call. Of course she was. I realized then that she wasn't just lashing out. She was playing a long game. She'd probably done this before. Knew exactly how to push people until they snapped, then used their reaction as proof they were unstable. I tried to backpedal, to apologize, but the damage was done. She had her recording. She had her narrative. Then came the personal attacks. I'd go to check my mail and hear her whispering to neighbors. "He seems unstable. Single fathers are often problematic. I worry about children in that environment." Once, she even claimed the police had been called to my house. Completely false, but she said it with such conviction that people believed her. I watched my neighbors start crossing the street when they saw me. Conversations would stop. Kids would be pulled inside. She was poisoning the entire community against me, and I couldn't fight back without looking like the angry, defensive outsider she wanted me to be. But she didn't stop there. She called my clients. "I'm concerned about the contractor's mental state," she'd say. "He's having problems with community integration. There have been behavioral issues." And just like that, $4,000 worth of weekend construction jobs vanished. Then my ex-wife, Jane, called. "I heard about these problems you're having," she said, her voice cold, clearly influenced by her lawyer. "Maybe Lily shouldn't visit this weekend. We need a stable environment for her." My heart cracked. "Please," I begged. "She's all I have." But Jane had already decided. Veronica's lies were spreading beyond the neighborhood. The lake obsession was the worst. Veronica started patrolling the shoreline in her golf cart, snapping photos if I so much as stepped onto my back porch. "Private property. No trespassing," she'd yell across the water, even though I was on my property. I couldn't enjoy the view from my kitchen without seeing her out there, watching me like a hawk. The dock, the very reason I'd fallen in love with this house, might as well have been on another planet. She'd positioned herself as the guardian of her lake, and that meant keeping me away from the water behind my own home. The fines kept coming. $100 for improper window blind positioning because my blinds weren't uniform with her aesthetic standards. $150 for unauthorized outdoor furniture because I'd put a chair on my porch. $200 for failure to maintain approved landscaping because some flowers my great-uncle had planted weren't on her approved species list. In 1 week, I was staring at $1,500 in fake fines, none of which were legally enforceable, but fighting them would mean lawyers, time, and money I didn't have. Veronica was building a file on me, photos, witness statements, recordings like she was a prosecutor compiling evidence. And the more I saw it, the more I realized I wasn't the first. Those 4 families she'd mentioned, They'd probably gone through the exact same thing. Targeted, isolated, driven out. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. And she had no idea what I was about to discover, something that would turn this whole twisted game on its head. I tried talking to my neighbors, hoping someone might see through Veronica's act. But every time I approached, they'd give me these tight, apologetic smiles and say things like, "Sorry, can't talk," before hurrying away. The friendly faces I'd seen during my first few days, people who'd waved or nodded as I unpacked, now looked at me with suspicion, even fear. I was being treated like a pariah in my own neighborhood, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. If someone like Veronica had told me that a new neighbor was unstable, dangerous, and causing problems, and then I saw that same guy arguing with her in public, I'd probably keep my distance too. She was brilliant at playing the victim, positioning herself as the concerned community leader, the one brave enough to stand up and protect everyone from the scary new guy who didn't belong. And it was working. My construction business was taking a serious hit. Word had spread that I was having issues at home, and clients started canceling jobs left and right. The mortgage payment was coming due, my income was drying up, and if things kept going like this, bankruptcy wasn't just a possibility, it was inevitable. One evening, I sat in my kitchen, staring out at the lake, the very reason I'd fallen in love with this house, and wondered how much longer I could last. The water was right there, sparkling in the sunset, and yet I couldn't step foot near it without Veronica screaming across the yard. She'd turned my dream home into a gilded prison, and for the first time, I understood why those other 4 families had given up and left. Maybe that was the plan all along, wear you down until you just walked away. Then one day, I came home to find a business card stuck in my doorframe. It was from Child Protective Services. Routine follow-up on living conditions report, it read. But I knew exactly where it came from. Veronica, another anonymous tip, this time about unsafe living conditions and concerning behavior patterns. My hands shook as I read it. A CPS investigation was the last thing I needed. Jane's lawyer would jump on it in a second, using it as proof that I wasn't fit to have Lily on weekends. But when I checked my security camera footage from the night before, I froze. At 3 a.m., someone had been in my backyard. The video was grainy, but I could make out a figure moving around near the dock, crouched down, working with what looked like tools or measuring equipment. Who was it? What were they doing? My mind raced. Was this Veronica again? Was she planting something? Tampering with the dock. The idea that someone had been on my property in the middle of the night, doing God knows what, made my skin crawl. Then the notice came, slipped into every mailbox on the street. An emergency community meeting. Urgent community safety discussion regarding problem resident. Problem resident. She wasn't even pretending anymore. I knew walking into that meeting was walking into a trap, but I couldn't stay away. If I didn't show up, it would only confirm whatever stories she was spinning about me being uncooperative or hiding something. The room was packed, 20 people, all neighbors, all silent as I walked in. Every pair of eyes turned to me, like I was on trial. The setup was straight out of a courtroom. Chairs arranged in a semicircle facing a single chair in the middle, mine. And standing at the front, clipboard in hand, was Veronica, playing judge, jury, and prosecutor all at once. She didn't just come prepared. She came armed. Her presentation would have made a prosecutor proud. The first slide read, "Threats to community safety." Then came the photos, doctored, twisted, taken out of context. Me checking my mail? Suspicious surveillance behavior. Me carrying tools into the house? Potential weapons stockpiling. Me asking her questions the first day? Aggressive confrontation with community leadership. She had charts, graphs, a timeline of incidents that made it look like I'd been terrorizing the neighborhood since day one. Recent divorce suggests emotional instability, she announced to the room, like my personal life was public record. Single father situation raises concerns about supervision and judgment. That one cut deep. I knew exactly what she was implying, that I was somehow less capable, less responsible, just because I was raising Lily on my own. And she said it with such fake concern that people nodded along, buying into the lie. She didn't just come prepared. She came armed, Her presentation would have made a prosecutor proud. The first slide read, "Threats to community safety." Then came the photos, doctored, twisted, taken out of context. Me checking my mail? Suspicious surveillance behavior. Me carrying tools into the house? Potential weapons stockpiling. Me asking her questions the first day? Aggressive confrontation with community leadership. She had charts, graphs, a timeline of incidents that made it look like I'd been terrorizing the neighborhood since day one. Recent divorce suggests emotional instability, she announced to the room, like my personal life was public record. Single father situation raises concerns about supervision and judgment. That one cut deep. I knew exactly what she was implying, that I was somehow less capable, less responsible, just because I was raising Lily on my own. And she said it with such fake concern that people nodded along, buying into the lie. Possible substance abuse, she continued. Zero evidence, of course. History of workplace disputes. A complete fabrication. But she delivered it all with such calm authority that I could see the doubt spreading across the room. Then she played an audio clip of our phone call. Only it was edited. My voice saying, "This is ridiculous." But without the context of the absurd fines or her constant harassment. Just that one line, clipped and distorted, made me sound unhinged. Photos of my tools laid out like weapons. Fake noise complaints presented as if they came from multiple neighbors, when I knew they all came from her. She'd built an entire false narrative that I was a dangerous, unstable outsider threatening their peaceful little world. And the scariest part? It was so polished, so professional, that for a moment I started to wonder if I was losing my grip. Property values are dropping due to the undesirable element, she told them, and I could see people mentally calculating how much money I was supposedly costing them. Children are unsafe with this person around, she added, another baseless claim, but effective. We must protect our exclusive community standards. There it was. The real truth. This wasn't about safety. It wasn't about rules or noise or parking. It was about class. About control. About keeping people like me, working class, divorced, rebuilding my life, out of what she considered her perfect little kingdom. Most of the room was nodding along, but I noticed a few faces looked uneasy. A couple people exchanged glances, like they knew something was off. At least a few still had their common sense intact. When I finally stood to speak, I said, "These are all lies." And just like that, she pounced. "See?" she said, turning to the crowd. Volatile behavior. Aggressive outbursts. The room physically recoiled. People leaned back, some even shifted their chairs away. Every word I said to defend myself became proof that I was unstable, that I was dangerous. She'd set the perfect trap. Normal human reactions to being falsely accused were twisted into evidence of guilt. Then came the vote. Motion to ban lake access for safety reasons, she announced, like she had the legal power to do that. And to my horror, the community voted. Ethan Brooks is banned from the lake. 15 people voted against me. 5 abstained, looking guilty, but too afraid to speak up. Any violation will result in arrest, she declared, pointing at the dock behind my house. Off limits. I was being banned from the water behind my own home by people who had no legal authority over me. But at the time, I didn't know that. And neither did they. After the meeting, as people filed out without meeting my eyes, Veronica approached with the most patronizing smile I'd ever seen. "Still time to sell and leave quietly?" she offered, like she was doing me a favor. "Save yourself further embarrassment. Some people just don't belong." The casual cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. She truly believed she had the right to decide who was worthy of living here. And she was convinced she had the power to drive out anyone who didn't meet her standards. I drove home past the lake, the whole reason I'd moved here, knowing I couldn't go near it. The dock behind my house might as well have been on another planet. And that night, I had to call Lily and tell her she couldn't come for the weekend. Daddy's having some problems right now. When she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" my heart shattered. "No, sweetheart," I said, holding back tears. "You didn't do anything wrong. There's just a crazy lady making things hard for Daddy." But I couldn't explain the truth to an 8-year-old. I was sitting in the car later, lost in self-pity, when an elderly neighbor, someone I'd seen but never spoken to, quietly approached. She looked around like she was afraid of being seen. "Your great-uncle was a good man," she whispered, pressing a folded piece of paper into my hand. "Maybe his nephew Frank can help." Then she hurried away before I could say a word. When I unfolded the paper, there was a phone number and a short note. "Call when desperate." At that point, desperation wasn't just an emotion. It was my entire life. But as I turned to walk inside, Veronica pulled me aside. She leaned in with a smile that sent chills down my spine. "I know something about your past," she said, "that could ruin everything. Want to hear it?" The confidence in her voice told me she wasn't bluffing. This wasn't just about the lake anymore. This was about destroying me completely. What could she possibly know? And how far was she willing to go? I was about to find out that my problems with Veronica Sterling were only just beginning. I stared at that phone number for 2 days. Pride kept me from calling. But finally, I hit rock bottom. I dialed. A gruff voice answered. "Frank. Uncle Frank," I said. There was a pause. Then warmth, real, genuine warmth, filled his voice. "Ethan? Jesus, I heard about your problems from some of the neighbors. Frank Brooks, my great-uncle Harry's best friend, a man who'd treated me like family when I was growing up. Can you come over?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I'm drowning here." He didn't hesitate. "On my way. Don't do anything stupid while I'm driving." 20 minutes later, an old county truck pulled into my driveway. Frank climbed out, same as I remembered. Weathered face, worn work clothes, and that quiet, steady confidence of a man who'd seen a lot and fixed even more. Just seeing him there on my property made me feel like I wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time since I'd moved here, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have to face Veronica Sterling alone.